Friday morning, I think I woke up and was in a reasonably good mood. I had so much on my plate, lots to do that day, but I'd had a plan. I was going to do this in the morning, but then, shortly after breakfast, something happened that upset me. I was very frustrated, very annoyed. Why could this happen? Who did this? Why is this? And then I'm like, okay, no, I'm going to keep on. I'm going to focus. I'm going to forget about that and keep on going. And then maybe I'll change up my plans a little bit. So then instead of going there, I went there, and this place was closed. So now I'm all frustrated and angry, and the next hour's just been rendered useless because I can't go back and do that. And now I'll just go for a walk and pray. So there's these voices of temptation of, well, now that I'm angry, this is just going to ruin my whole day, isn't it? I'm not going to be able to do any more work. I'm not going to be able to recover from this. I might as well just call it a prayer day and sit with the Lord about it. I don't know. I felt, though, at the end of the day, that it was a good day. Now, it wasn't because I'd got enough work done. I definitely would have liked to have practically done more on Friday than I did. But I felt that even with those voices telling me that, this anger's not going to go away from you, that you're going to be frustrated all day, or, this day's a write-off, you're not going to be able to achieve anything. I didn't give in to those voices. And I kept on kind of seeking, okay, Lord, what are you calling me to do today? How do you want to use this time that I've got? And I kept open to it, even in the face of those voices. Now, I don't share that just to debrief my week with you. Thankfully, I have other places I can do that. But I share that because I think it relates with another man who faced some unexpected challenges on a difficult Friday morning. I don't know how often Pilate would have to stand judge over a man and decide whether he should be put to death or not, but he didn't expect to be doing it that morning. The Jews didn't have an appointment to come banging on his door. They didn't really bang on his door. It was this mob appears in front of the Praetorium early on Friday morning, demanding that this man be crucified. Now, we see in these verses we've just read that we don't see a whole lot about Pilate, but what we do see is that he does have some sense of justice. He might be this terrible Roman ruler, we can characterize him in whatever other way, but we see in these texts some sense of justice that he knows that it's wrong to put a man to death for no reason. He's very clear on that. 3 or 4 times he comes back to the Jews and says, no. I've investigated your accusations, I've questioned him, and there's no proof in it. There's nothing that he's done that deserves death. So I'm not going to crucify him. He comes back again and again. There's this sense in his heart that's saying, this is not the right thing to do. I need to be honest here and deny them their wishes. But the Jews keep coming back louder and louder. He has an angry mob screaming at him, telling him that this man deserves to die. He must be crucified. And this tragic moment in the gospel, these words that have struck me, it says Pilate comes back again and says, no, I've looked into it and I can't find anything that's worthy of death, so I'm just going to have him released. And it says their shouts kept on getting louder. They were urgently demanding that he would be crucified, and their voices prevailed. Pilate's wrestling within himself between these demands being thrown at him and this voice of justice within his heart, but the shouts of the mob prevail. What are the voices that come to us in the moments of temptation that we wrestle with? Sometimes they're as obvious as a mob shouting in our face, saying, okay, my desires are just pulling me in that direction, as if I can't live without this thing. So sometimes the temptation's a bit more obvious. Sometimes it's a bit more subtle, and it's just a question in our minds. Maybe I know exactly what I've decided to do in such a situation, or I've got a resolution about how I'm going to act, but then the little voice comes that, no, it'll be fun. Go for it. You deserve it. Or, no one's around. No one's going to know. It's just a little sin. Those voices come. Maybe I know that Jesus is what I need. I know that I want to follow God with all my heart, that I need to have him in my life. But then this voice comes, why do you bother with all that churchy stuff? What's it doing for you? Why do you spend that time Or maybe it's just the challenges that we're facing seem so great before us that the voice comes to say, no, you're not managing. You're not going to be able to get through this. Just give up. You can't face it. Pilate's not the only one that we see facing a wrestle, facing a temptation like this in our gospel today. I want to look at a few of our other characters and the way that they wrestle with temptation, the way that they meet it, because I think there's some fruit for us in how we're called to face these moments and wrestle with them. The first one is Judas. Now, we don't hear a whole lot of what's going on in Judas's heart in this text today, but we know that he's one of the 12. He's one of Jesus' closest disciples. He's been journeying with Jesus for a couple of years, touring around with him, probably joining in his ministry, probably even preaching about the good news of Jesus. So he's decided on following him. Yeah, but there's some other voice that's cropped up in his heart, whether it was simply greed for the money, whether it was just the fear of, okay, Jesus keeps talking about this persecution that's coming, and I don't know if I want to be part of that. Maybe it was the pride that Jesus seems to be going about this the wrong way. I need to do something and take control of things because I have a better idea. Whatever it is, that other voice prevails over his desire to follow Jesus as a disciple. Judas wasn't able to stick to that resolution that he'd made, to continue to follow Jesus. And I think we can learn from Judas here, because if you or I want to follow Jesus, there are going to be voices that tell us to stop. There are going to be voices that want to lead us down another path, that want to tell us that, you've forgotten about that zeal that you had. That was just misguided nonsense. You shouldn't keep following him. If we're serious about being Jesus' disciples, there will be voices that take us off that path. So we need to be clear about what voices we're listening to, but we also need the humility to put ourselves under Jesus' voice and trust in him. Because Judas couldn't do it in his own strength. Jesus was also tempted, as we heard in our reading. Jesus, every single moment of his life, he has done the Father's will. Every single fiber of his being is set on doing the Father's will. He's perfectly holy. He's perfectly surrendered to the Father. He knows what he wants to do. But he's also still completely human. And the Gospels don't give us a picture of Jesus that's kind of just walking happily to the cross. Yay, I'm going to lay down my life for all of humanity. It's going to be great. That's not the picture of Jesus we get. We see a Jesus that is wrestling with intense fear. He knows that he's about to suffer, and he doesn't like it. It's terrible to face what he's about to enter into. And so his whole being is saying, I don't want to face this. There's this voice saying, you're not going to make it through this. Perhaps a voice saying, how can this possibly be the Father's will for you? How can this be good? A voice that suggests, you need to save yourself from this. You need to ask the Father to save you from this. And so how does Jesus respond to this wrestle? He shows us that our facing of temptations like this is not about getting rid of the negative feelings, getting rid of the unsightly feelings and trying to feel some beautiful, blissful peace within ourselves. No, Jesus is very real with the fear. He's very real with the desire felt in his humanity that he doesn't want to go through this. So he says to the Father, take this cup away from me. I feel like I can't face it. I feel like I don't want to face it. Please take this cup away from me. But, the very important but that needs to be in our prayer, but not my will, but your will be done. Despite all of this fear telling him to run away, he trusts himself to the Father. And so we're invited to, when we face those tempting voices, when we face the challenges that seem far too big for us, we trust ourselves to the Father. Jesus shows us that the invitation is to trust, even when it seems like there's an angry mob shouting at us. We're invited to trust in the Father. Even when it seems like our strength is completely spent, I can't continue down this road, I'm invited to trust in the Father. Even when trusting in the Father seems like a hopeless option, and how could that possibly be fruitful or helpful, we're invited to trust in the Father and make that prayer. Not my will, but your will be done. I trust in your will, Father. Now, Jesus is a very helpful example for us in facing temptation, but I think our last character is the most helpful example for us, because I want to look lastly at Peter. Because despite his dogged determination to follow Jesus, I'm going to be with you till the very end, he falls to the voice of self-preservation. He sees Jesus arrested, dragged off in chains, and he saves himself. He denies Jesus to save himself because he's scared. But even though that tempting voice of self-preservation prevailed over his determination to follow Jesus, the shame and the humiliation and the sorrow that he felt from falling in that way didn't prevail over the voice of Jesus, the gaze of Jesus, as we heard, inviting him back. And this is why Peter is such a good example for us, because you and I are going to fall. We are going to fail. We are going to face voices of temptation that are too strong for us and that will knock us off our perch. But that's not the last word, as it wasn't the last word for Peter. There's another voice that comes in, the voice of Jesus, that says, I am the one who will restore you. I am the one who's going to pick you up and put you back on the path. I am the one with the strength that can help you make it to the end. Jesus knows that our strength isn't enough, but he picks us up again. When Peter falls, can't imagine how heartbreaking that would have been for him, what he's been through with Jesus. But Jesus gazes at him with that invitation. Trust in me again, and I'll restore you. We're invited to walk into Holy Week, follow this journey with Jesus through the passion and the death, through the tomb, hoping to join in the life of the resurrection. And I'm sure many of us are determined that we are here to follow Jesus, that we want to go through everything with him. And so we come to share in these experiences with him, meet him there. But let's also hear the other story, the other voice that's also present in this story, that when we find our own determination isn't enough to keep us going, when we find that our strength isn't enough to keep following the path, when we fall away, this story shows us that Jesus always welcomes us back, that he will restore us and pick us up, because he is our strength. He is our Savior.